So for this section, we're going to talk about proportions and how to set them up. Now, we've done a little bit with proportions already this year when we were dealing with our percentage problems. You guys had a percentage proportion that you used. So after you have your proportions set up, how do you guys solve a proportion? Cross multiply, or use that butterfly method, okay? So when you're dealing with cross products, if you're having a proportion, they should be equal to each other, which is why we can use that method to solve these. So we've seen this before, but if you had a proportion that looked like this, A over B equals C over D, so they're going to be written as fractions, you're going to take A times D and then B times C, and you're going to set those equal. A lot of times you'll have one of those pieces as a variable, and that's what you're trying to solve for. So then after you've cross multiplied, then you'll have to probably do a division in order to get the variable by itself. Okay, so let's take a look at some examples here. We've got x over 4 equals 9 over 6. So cross multiply or butterfly method, circle those numbers if you need to, but you're going to do 4 times the 9 and x times the 6. So 6 times x is just going to be 6x. What's 4 times 9? 36. So we have 6x equals 36 now. How would you solve for x? Divide by 6. So you get x equals 6. Okay, take a look at number 2. 4x over 5 is equal to 17 over 20. So start by cross multiplying first. So we're going to take 4x times 20. And we're going to take 5 times 17. So 4x times 20, you just take the 4 times the 20. So what's 4 times 20? So you have 80x. What's 5 times 17? 85. Okay, and then what would you do? How do you get x along? Divide by 80. Well, can we reduce that? You probably could. You could probably take a 5, at least a 5 out of both of them. So we already know that 5 times 17 was the 85, so we should be able to reduce the 85 to 17. But what's 80 divided by 5? 16. So we're going to have 17 over 16. You guys can leave it there. You don't have to write it as a proper fraction. You can leave it as an improper fraction. It's also okay if you happen to give me the decimal. As long as it's the correct decimal, I'll give you credit for that too. Now on the next one, when you cross multiply, do you guys know what you have to do with like the 5 and the x minus 2? Distribute, because really what's happening here is you're taking 5 times that whole quantity x minus 2. So you can like picture those two terms being in parentheses. The same thing's going to happen when you take 3 times x plus 8. You have to think about the distributive property another time. So I would take 5 and distribute into x minus 2. You also need to do that with the 3. So on the left side, after you distribute 5, what's it say? Five x minus 10. What does the right side say? Good, 3x plus 24. Now we have to get our x terms together and our numbers together. So what I would do is subtract 3x from the 5x. So you're going to have 5x minus 3x, which is 2x, minus 10 gets brought down, bring down your equal sign, bring down your 24. What would you guys do next? Okay, so add 10. So now you have 2x equals 34. Last step. Divide by 2. So what is 34 divided by 2? 17. So x is equal to 17. Biggest mistake I see that happen on problems like that is students will take 5 times x and they'll forget to do 5 times the 2. Or they'll take 3 times x and forget to do 3 times 8. And so they end up with wrong expressions, which then gives them the wrong answer. So just make sure that you're being careful of that and you're double checking that you're multiplying to everything that needs to be multiplied. Now for the fourth one, you've got 3 over x equals 7. 7 isn't written as a fraction right now, but how could you write 7 as a fraction? 7 over 1. So I'm going to put 3 over x and set that equal to 7 over 1. That way, when I do my cross multiplication, I can see the numbers that are going to connect. So I have 3 times 1, which is 3. X times 7, which is just 7x. Then to get x alone, I'm going to divide by 7. So I'm going to get x equals 3 over 7. Again, I'm just going to leave it as the fraction. If you leave it as a decimal, that's okay too. Which I don't know what that would be, but it's okay if it's what you give me. As long as it's the right decimal. Now for this last one on this front page here, it's the same type of problem. They've just added labels for this here. So they're probably talking about, like, if you know that you need 1.5 gallons to, maybe it's like painting. Okay, you need 1.5 gallons of paint to cover 450 square feet. They want to know how many gallons would I need then for 1,250 square feet instead. It's still a proportion, so we're still able to cross multiply. Don't worry so much about the labels. You're just trying to figure out how many gallons you're finding. So I would just multiply the numbers, because you're going to take 450 times the x, which would be 450x. And then I'm taking 1.2 times the 1250. So if I take 1.2 times 1250, let's see, what am I going to get? 1,500. Then I would divide by 450. And I get, for this one, it's 3.3 repeating. Okay, or it would be 3 1/3 if I had it as a fraction, and that would be gallons. So let's say, like I said, if they were talking about paint here, I would need 3 1/3 gallons then of paint to cover that surface.